Math 3, Unit 5, Section C. Today we're talking about multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So do you guys remember what you do when you are dividing fractions? KFC. So like in fact, well, let's just put that note here right now. So down here, we're going to use KFC. For those of you, does everybody know what that stands for? Keep, flip, change. What we mean by that, you keep your first fraction, you flip the second fraction, and you change the sign to multiplication. So basically, division and multiplication are similar or the same, you just have to end up changing some stuff in the problem around. One of the things from yesterday, if you remember, is that anytime you have pluses or minuses, you can't cancel them out unless everything is exactly the same. I cannot talk. And then the last thing to remember is that anything on the top can reduce with anything on the bottom. So you can reduce diagonally or top to bottom, okay? And you can reduce things more than once. Another thing to remember is that we don't want to end up getting 0 in the denominator. Today we're not going to worry about that as much. We'll come back to that actually again in section D. And basically when you're solving equations and you're finding the answer for x, you want to make sure it doesn't end up equaling one of your extraneous or excluded values. So today we're just going to simplify. Sound good? So looking at A, is there anything that I can reduce top and bottom by? So like, could 3 go into 5 or 8? No? Notice how all the A's are in the denominator, so you can't reduce those. And so when we're simplifying, we're just writing this as one fraction. And so 5 times 8 is 40 over 3, and that's going to be A to what power? Good. That's it. And you can always kind of double check by looking at that, seeing if there's anything that can simplify. Okay, B, what do you think we're going to need to do? We want to reduce, good. And so what do you think I'm going to do with the top over here? Factor it, right? So remember, this is my adding number. This is my multiplying number. So what numbers multiply to be 2 and add to be 3? 2. So I'm going to rewrite this. Good. So we have 3x squared over x plus 2 times, and then we have x plus 2 and x plus 1. And this is over x. Okay. Do we notice anything that can be reduced? Good. X plus 2's. Anything else? Good, one of the x's. So this x can cancel, and I'm going to cancel out with one of those, so that's going to make that a what? Just an x, right? Yeah. So that 2 goes away because there's only a 1 now. Is there anything then else that can reduce? Or we can make that a 1. Nope. And so my answer is 3x times x plus 1. One thing to remember, and based on like your previous tests, is that when you have multiple choice answers, there can be more than one answer, right? And so we get this answer, but what could be another answer for this one? Good, yeah, we could distribute this 3x squared through here and get 3x squared plus 3x. And so that would be another possible answer. So you always kind of need to be aware of what your answer is and what it could be. All right, C. What will I do on the top over here? Good, GCF, which would be 2, and I'm left with x minus 7. In the denominator, can I factor out or GCF anything? What? A 2 as well. And I'm left with 2x minus 3. Good. Times. Now I'm going to make this a fraction. If I change this to a fraction, what goes in the denominator? Good. Okay, do you guys remember how to factor this? Always check for GCF first, but there isn't one. So we're going to multiply over. So 6 times 6 is, so what multiplies to be 36 and adds to be negative 13? Perfect. Negative 9, negative 4. So I'm going to rewrite this as 6x squared minus 9x minus 4x plus 6. So again, remember we group these. So I have my first two and my last two. What can I take out of my first group? 3x. And I'm left with 2x minus 3. And then my second group, what would I take out? A negative 2. And I'd be left with 2x minus 3. Are we okay with that? All right, so that means what is it going to become over here once it's finally factored? Good. 2x minus 3 and 3x minus 2. Okay, do we see anything that can reduce? Good, 2x minus 3's. Anything else? The 2's. Okay, and so we are left with x minus 7 and 3x minus 2. And since the only thing on the bottom is 1, 1 doesn't really matter, right? And so we don't need to write that as a fraction, and that is my answer. Okay, so down to dividing, and we kind of already talked about this, but we need to remember that we always change division to multiplication. And so we're going to keep our first fraction the same. So we have x over x plus y. We change division to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction, and we get x plus y over xy. Can anything cross reduce here, or reduce? Good, x plus y's, and the x's. Okay, remember that if something is in the denominator, it needs to stay in the denominator. So the only thing I have left is y, which is in the denominator. So if nothing is left on top, what's there? 1. Okay, this next one, there's factoring and GCFs and all that, but I'm going to give out candy to the first 3 people to get it correct. So I'm going to give you a minute to work on that one on your own.
But you flipped it and just flipped it. And so, since there's a 2 here, it's 2 times 3 makes 6. That makes sense because that's all
Yeah.
from the top. Then you got it. Perfect.
Okay, the correct answer was 6 over k plus 4. I'm going to start working through it. If you're still finishing up, that's good, and then you can kind of check what I've done. So the first fraction, there's a GCF of 4, and we're left with k plus 2. The bottom here, there's a GCF of 2, and I'm left with 2k minus 5.
3K.
Yes, thank you. Candy for you. Okay, 3k minus 5. Division changes to what? Multiplication, and we flip it. What can I take out of 9k minus 15? A 3. Now, if you want to write this as 9k minus 15 over the k squared plus 6k plus 8 and then factor, you can. It's kind of up to you. So I'm going to take out a 3, and I'm left with 3k minus 5. And then remember here, this is my adding, and this number is my multiplying. And so what 2 numbers work? Good, k plus 4 and k plus 2. So then now as we look through this, we have the 3k minus 5s can reduce, the k plus 2s can reduce, and then 2 goes into 4 2 times. So pay attention to what's left, because notice there is a 2 and a 3 on top. You multiply those together and you are left with 6. The denominator, the only thing that's left is k plus 4. And that's your answer. That one reduced. Right, good? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So we have a couple more division problems. Remember, this is going to be z minus 1 over 1. So let's go ahead. I'm going to rewrite this using KFC first. And so we end up flipping that second fraction, and we have 1 over z minus 1. Now I'm going to factor. So here, what multiplies to be 1 and adds to be negative 2? Good. Z minus 1 and z minus 1. Can I factor z squared plus 2? No, right? Because with squares, it has to be a difference of squares, and 2 isn't even a square, right? And so that one's just going to be z squared plus 2 times, and then 1 over z minus 1. So the only thing that cancels is what? Z minus 1. And so my answer is z minus 1 over z squared plus 2. Okay. Anybody have any idea what we're going to do with that negative 1 exponent on the other side? Yeah, it just means to flip it. So this is multiplying, but because of the negative 1 exponent, anything that's on the top of over here has to go to the bottom. Anything that goes on the bottom goes to the top in order to make that negative 1 exponent a positive 1 exponent. So that means I have x plus 3 over x plus 4 times, and then x plus 4 over x minus 1. Okay, so these reduce, and I end up with x plus 3 over x minus 1.
So it's like pretty much already flipped from that. Like, is it like doing a flip?
Right, so in order to get rid of that negative 1 exponent, you just, anything that's on the top goes to the bottom, anything that's on the bottom goes to the top, and then that changes the negative exponent to a positive.
So that is your flip. You don't even flip
Right. We only flip it when it's dividing,
it. Oh, it was.
and it wasn't dividing. Otherwise, we'd have to flip it twice. Okay. So this next part is about complex fractions. A complex fraction is a fraction that contains one or more fractions in its numerator and in its denominator, or in both. And you simplify them by dividing its numerator by its denominator. Now, while this looks complicated, it's exactly what we've been doing. Okay, so what do I mean is, this is 1 over q plus 4 divided by 2q squared over 2q plus 8. So while it looks different and complicated for some reason, it's not, right? It's just the same thing that we've already been doing this whole unit, or this whole lesson. So what will I do for this problem? Good, keep flip change. So I have 1 over q plus 4 times, and then we're going to have 2q plus 8 over 2q squared. Oops, sorry. Okay, is there anything that I need to factor? Good. So I still have the first fraction is 1 over q plus 4 times, and then I can factor out a 2, and I get q plus 4 over 2q squared. So what can reduce? Q plus 4's and the 2's. So we end up with 1 over q squared. All right, any questions? Okay, this last one is just slightly more complicated because of all the factoring. Do you think you guys can handle it on your own? Yeah. Okay, you guys want to earn candy? Maybe, maybe not. That would be good. That's what I want to. All right, let me know when you get the answer, or if you need help.
like actually saying.
I guess it could be eight.
Yeah, there's just that. Oh, yeah,
There's an aggregate makes a lot of people.
there is also a C plus two. Good job. So you guys can start.
Okay, I'm going to start going through this. Those of you that already got it correct, you are good. So the first thing is if I rewrite this, we have C plus 4 divided by C squared plus 5C plus 6. I'm going to go ahead and change this to multiplication. So instead of writing division and this, I'm going to flip this and just write it to multiplication. Is that okay? So that means that 2C squared plus 5C minus 3 is on top, and then 3C squared plus 12C is in the denominator. Is everybody okay with that step? Okay, so C plus 4, that one's pretty easy. Don't have to do anything. The denominator here. What multiplies to be 6 adds to be 5?
I got this one this time. 3 and 2.
Good. I know, that one's tricky a lot of the time. So 3 and 2. So C plus 3, C plus 2 times. Okay, over here, the denominator is pretty easy because I'm just going to be taking out a what?
C.
A 3C, a GCF. And then I'm left with C plus 4. And then the top is just a little more complicated because I have to go through this whole process. And so we multiply that over and I have a negative 6 and then positive 5. So what numbers will work for that one? Good. Positive 6, negative 1. And so when we rewrite this, we have this as 2C squared and then plus 6C minus 1C minus 3. So all we're doing is we're exchanging that positive 5C for 6C and minus 1C. Then we group them and do our GCF. So I can take out a 2C and I'm left with C plus 3. In order to make that a C plus 3, what do I take out? A negative 1, and then I have C plus 3. So when I finally factor that one, I have C plus 3 and good, 2C minus 1. So I'm going to stop there for just 1 minute, and I can go back through any of the factoring. Any questions? So it's almost like you have kind of like 4 mini problems within one problem, right? And some of them you have to factor, some of them you don't, some of them you have GCF. Okay, and then now that you're at this point, now we just reduce anything that we can.
C plus 3.
Okay, C plus 3s can cancel.
C plus 4.
C plus 4s. And that's it. Look carefully to see what's left over, because I want to say that sometimes the thing that people miss is that they have it all correct, but they forget to write little pieces down. So we have 2C minus 1 on top, and on the bottom I have the C plus 2 and the 3C. So we'd write that as 3C times C plus 2. So normally anytime you have numbers or letters that aren't being added, those go to the very front, and then anything in parentheses goes at the end. And that's it. That's your answer. Are there any questions? Okay.